Welcome back to Uncivil Law, where we just don't break down legal cases, we obliterate the nonsense. Today, we've got a case that's as wild as it is ridiculous. Picture this: a decorated Boston police officer tragically loses his life, and instead of focusing on the real story, his grieving family decides to sue not one, but two bars and his girlfriend, Karen Reed, in what can only be described as a legal Hail Mary. They're throwing out accusations so outlandish, you'll wonder if they're pulled straight from the pages of a cheap crime novel. But here's the kicker: this lawsuit is so full of holes, it's practically Swiss cheese. And trust me, we're just getting started. The plaintiffs are trying to spin a narrative where Karen Reed is some kind of mastermind villain, orchestrating a tragic accident and then coldly covering it up. They're dragging in two different bars, hoping to make them pay for serving the drinks like they do every single night. But as we dive deeper, you'll see why this case is nothing more than a desperate attempt to find someone, anyone, to blame. You won't believe how far off the mark they really are, and by the end of this breakdown, you'll be wondering why this lawsuit isn't being laughed out of court on day one. Stick around, because you won't want to miss how this legal farce unfolds. So here's the gist. O'Keefe's family is throwing a legal Hail Mary, naming two bars, and because why not, his girlfriend, Karen Reed, as the villains of this particular tragic story. They claim a couple of drinks at C.F. McCarthy's and Waterfall Bar and Grill turned Reed into a reckless maniac who mowed down O'Keefe with her SUV and left him to die in a snowstorm. Really? That's what they're going with? This case reads like a bad TV drama, where everyone is desperate to point the finger anywhere but where it might actually belong. O'Keefe's death is tragic, no question, but that doesn't mean we get to play fast and loose with the facts to find someone, anyone, to blame. And Karen Reed, in my opinion, is getting the raw end of the deal. Let's start by shredding this so-called case against the bars, because if there's anything weaker than this lawsuit, it's the idea that the bars are somehow responsible for what happened. C.F. McCarthy's and Waterfall Bar and Grill are getting dragged into this lawsuit for one simple reason: the plaintiffs are desperate. They're trying to pin this tragedy on anyone with a liquor license. It's like trying to play legal darts blindfolded. Throw enough and maybe something will stick. But newsflash, this one isn't sticking. The accusations here are that these bars served Karen Reed while she was supposedly falling down drunk, turning her into a ticking time bomb. The plaintiffs want us to believe that the bartenders should have seen the future, that serving one more drink to Karen Reed would somehow lead to O'Keefe's death. You'd have to be a psychic to make that leap, or completely detached from reality. Massachusetts dram shop laws are designed to stop bars from being reckless. But here's the kicker: you'd actually have to prove that the bar knew or should have known the person was too drunk to be served. And let's be real. Unless Karen Reed was passed out on the bar, there's no way the bartenders could have predicted what happened next. The idea these bars are at fault is laughable at best. Now that we've torn apart the absurd case against the bars, let's tackle the real target of this witch hunt, Karen Reed. And trust me, it only gets more ridiculous from here. If there's one thing this lawsuit is good at, it's trying to make Karen Reed the fall guy, or should I say fall girl, for something she clearly didn't do. The plaintiffs are spinning a tale so far-fetched, it belongs in a soap opera. Let's dig into why this case against Karen Reed is nothing more than trying to shift the blame onto someone who did nothing. So according to this legal fairy tale, Karen Reed, after having a couple of drinks, decided to run down O'Keefe with her SUV and then casually leave him outside to die in a snowstorm. Oh, and let's not forget the plot twist. They claim she later came back to try to cover it up. I'm sorry, but are we really supposed to believe this? For starters, the timeline is a mess. The plaintiffs want us to think that Reed was too drunk to know what she was doing, yet somehow sober enough to mastermind a cover-up. Come on, this isn't CSI canon, although if it were, we'd expect there to be more mention in the lawsuit of solo cups and leaf blowers. There's no hard evidence here, just a lot of wild speculation and wistful thinking from a family desperate for answers. Let's also talk about the Blizzard narrative. The idea that Reed knowingly left O'Keefe outside to freeze to death is not just absurd, it's insulting. Maybe she thought he was going to get inside. Maybe she didn't realize what happened. Or maybe, just maybe, she isn't involved at all, and the car accident never happened, as was revealed during her criminal trial. Trooper Proctor and Trooper Paul might have thought they heard the crime scene whisper to them guilty, but the lack of evidence, not to mention the defiance of physics, paints a vastly different story. We've ripped apart the bar's supposed liability and exposed the gaping holes in the case against Karen Reed. Now let's move on to the emotional distress claim, which is about as convincing as Trooper Paul's credentials. Emotional distress claims can be legitimate when they're based on reality, but in this case, the plaintiffs are throwing around emotional distress like it's confetti, hoping it will stick. Spoiler alert, it won't. The family of O'Keefe claims they've suffered severe emotional distress because of Karen Reed's alleged actions. And you know what? I don't doubt they are suffering. Losing a loved one is devastating, but turning that pain into a legal weapon against Reed, well, that's a different story. In Massachusetts, to win an emotional distress claim, you need more than just hurt feelings. You need to show the defendant's conduct was both extreme and outrageous, and it caused severe emotional distress with physical symptoms. So where's the proof that Karen Reed did anything remotely extreme or outrageous? Waking up O'Keefe's niece in a state of panic might not have necessarily been the best decision, but let's be clear, it's not the stuff of a lawsuit. And what about the physical symptoms? The plaintiffs throw around claims of severe distress, but where's the medical evidence? Without it, these claims are nothing more than legally dubious attempts to pile on more damages. It's like trying to build a house out of sand. It's just not going to stand up in court. With the emotional distress claims debunked, it's time to tackle the final nail in this coffin of this ridiculous lawsuit, punitive damages. Because if you thought the rest of this case was a stretch, wait till you hear about this. Punitive damages are meant for cases in which the defendant's conduct is so far beyond the pale it deserves extra punishment. But trying to get punitive damages out of this case, that's like trying to get blood out of a stone. Completely unrealistic. The plaintiffs are asking for punitive damages, basically hoping to punish the defendants for alleged behavior. But here's the problem. Punitive damages require proof of malice, fraud, or reckless disregard. And as we've already established, there's nothing in this case that comes even close to proof. The bars serve drinks. That's their job. There's no evidence they acted with any kind of malice or intent to harm. And as for Karen Reed, the plaintiffs want to paint her as some kind of criminal mastermind who coldly calculated O'Keefe's death. But as we've already shown, this narrative doesn't hold water. Without solid evidence of intentional wrongdoing or recklessness, punitive damages are nothing more than a fantasy. We've torn apart this lawsuit to shreds, exposing its weak points, lack of evidence, and over-the-top accusations. So what are the takeaways here? At the end of the day, this lawsuit is a perfect example of what happens when grief and desperation meets the legal system. It's a tragic situation, but turning Karen Reed into the villain is not the answer. This case isn't about justice. It's about finding someone to blame, and that's not how our legal system is supposed to work. Karen Reed is being used as a convenient scapegoat in a story that's nothing more than emotion rather than facts. The plaintiffs are stretching the law to its breaking point, trying to drag in the bars, slap Reed with an emotional distress claim, and even squeeze out punitive damages, all with little to no evidence. It's a case that should be laughed out of court, not given the time of day. So after tearing apart this ridiculous lawsuit, I've got a few questions for you. First, do you think Karen Reed is a real-life villain the plaintiffs are desperately trying to make her out to be, or is she just the unlucky star of a legal soap opera? Second, how many bars do you think the plaintiffs should sue before they realize alcohol and Karen Reed might not actually be the problem? And third, do you think this case should have ever seen the inside of a courtroom, or does it belong in the trash bin of frivolous lawsuits? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear what you think. Until next time, I've been Uncivil Law, and remember to keep it uncivil out there.